Today we're going digital. That's right, we're recording video in digital format, not on DVD, but with MiniDV. So the first thing that I got in this accessory lot is this. Obviously a MiniDV cassette. It's an official Sony one, and it's in really good condition. The outer case does of course have some minor scratching, but honestly I can't complain. The cassette itself though looks to be in basically brand new condition, and we even got the sticker sheet so we can actually write down what's on the tape. Now I'm gonna try and reuse these cassettes, so I'm not gonna use those stickers, but having them alongside with everything here is really cool to see. And real quick, the tape media is also in basically brand new condition. Next up we have this. An official Sony Handycam adapter here, model number AC-L25A, and I do actually have another adapter just like this. It's the AC-L200. It looks pretty much identical. I think this one's actually a bit bigger. I did not get the actual cable with it itself, but I have so many of these that I can actually leave one of them permanently with this because, well, yeah, I got a lot of cables. So I've got the official cable here for my other power adapter, and this is actually the same type of charger for this DVD camcorder here. I do have a battery on this Handycam, but it does not hold any charge whatsoever, so seems to be working. Next up we have a lens hood, which is really cool because I don't have anything like this for any one of my Handycams. So now I can actually use something with the threads that the cameras actually have. Now it obviously doesn't work on this guy because, well, yeah, it's a bit too big, but it will work on my High 8 camcorder, which is really cool. It's the first time I've had anything like this for the lens itself. Oh, and as for the condition, this is in fantastic shape. It doesn't have any scratching whatsoever. It is ever so slightly dusty, but that's nothing a good clean shouldn't fix, and we will get around to cleaning these later on. But next up we also have this. This is an official Sony cable for this Handycam, and really just any one of these Handycams from this era. And the condition is actually brand new. Like, this is genuinely in such good shape. I can't believe how well it's actually lasted. I wouldn't be surprised if this is actually the factory twist tie because, well, it's amazing. I'm really happy to have this alongside the Handycam accessories because, well, I've had this camcorder for years. I haven't had really any accessories for it, especially the video output. Handycams from the mid-2000s have this special Sony standard for composite video. They have another one for component video as well, but yeah, I haven't had anything to actually hook this camcorder up to until now. Now I can actually hook this up to a TV or anything that takes composite or S video, and, well, I can actually use this camcorder with another display, which is such a wow, such a unique concept, right? And yeah, here is the Sony logo on that. It is a genuine cable. Next up, we also got a manual. Of course, it is a Sony manual for a Sony Handycam, specifically model number DCR-HC65/85. And, well, I don't have this Handycam. I have the manual for it now, but yeah. I mean, it is nice to have an extra manual here, and I may actually learn some information from this. I know that you can get these readily online from the Sony website, but this one's actually from 2004. It's a MiniDV Handycam, and this is actually the earliest I've seen InfoLithium P in action. The Sony Handycam here actually uses an InfoLithium P battery, but up until this era, I'm pretty sure they were still using InfoLithium M, and it was at the very end of the actual, like, standard InfoLithium, which was later renamed to InfoLithium L. But what's cool about this is that I did actually take a look at the inside here, at least in terms of the accessories that this came with. And check this out. It actually has the lens hood, which we have right here, and I'm pretty sure this is exclusive for the HC85, so the higher end model. And we also have the AV cable, which we have right here. So this is really awesome to see. I think the power supply might be the same as well, considering it's the same standard as the DVD camcorder, but it's just really cool to see that we have the exact same accessories here that the manual actually has listed. So who knows, someday I might actually get this Handycam, and if I do, well, I'm ready because I have the manual. Last but not least, we also have this. This is the first time I've actually had a proper remote control, or a remote commander as Sony likes to call it, for any sort of Handycam. What's really cool about this is that obviously, like the Handycam itself, this is also a small remote, and it just goes so well with the design language here. What's funny though is that this camcorder doesn't actually have an IR receiver for this, so well, it's not necessarily super useful for this, but I do actually have a battery installed on here. Model number is RMT-831. Obviously it's an infrared remote, and I don't know why they felt like they had to describe this instead of just writing out that this takes a CR2025, but I will say that if you don't have the battery tray inside, it will take a CR2032, which I have a lot of, unlike the 2025s. So I do have the battery tray, but it just won't work together because the battery itself is obviously larger. But as you can see, it does actually say CR2025 on this. But considering we do have a battery, I guess we can actually test it out to make sure it actually does have a signal here. So it is working, and I guess that kind of reveals the secret now, huh? Yeah, if it wasn't clear about the MiniDV theme here, we have another cool addition that I'm actually using right now. I honestly have no words. This is incredible. I still can't believe I have this here. It's HD, but it's on a video cassette. This is so cool. As for the other power supply, it's right here, and well, it's actually being used for the HDV camcorder. So now I have this power supply and the other one, which means I can simultaneously use these Handycams. Not super ideal or convenient considering I still need more accessories here. Ever since I found out that HDV was a thing, I needed to know more. HDV is such a cool concept as a whole because you're taking a video cassette and you're recording an HD image onto it, which is insane. I know that it's nothing new, especially by the time that this was released, but to have it in a handheld form factor with 1080i HD video, especially when you combine it with an era-appropriate Macintosh, or if you even have like a Sony Vaio system, it's just so cool. It's just like MiniDisc, because ever since I found out about MiniDisc, I needed to get some because it's awesome. And in fact, if you weren't convinced already, today's video was brought to you by HD Video on MiniDV. And just like that, we're good to go. And it makes an awesome, classic, like high 8, video 8 era noise because we do, of course, have a video head inside this. What's even more impressive is the fact that you can actually install a high-capacity battery here, and it actually fits inside the camcorder itself. They managed to make this as small as possible and yet accommodate such a large battery. For comparison, if you actually take a look at the DVD camcorder here, well, if you had a larger capacity one, it would stick out even more than this does. So to have this here with a whole tape mechanism is insane. We do, of course, have HDV 1080i. Right now it's in standby mode. Unfortunately, this does have some minor problems. First off, the zoom rocker here, for whatever reason, doesn't do anything. Now, this could be just due to a dirty contact or something like that. I haven't actually cleaned this either because, well, we'll get to that in a moment alongside the rest of the accessories here. I haven't actually really done much with this except for some recording, and probably the bigger issue of the two is that we don't actually have video on this because, well, the ribbon cable needs to be repaired. So unfortunately, I am stuck with just the viewfinder here. I'm just excited to have an HDV camcorder. I can still use this as a transfer deck at the very least if I really wanted to. I mean, as you saw earlier, it does record, it does play back, and it can even take still images, but I don't have a Memory Stick Pro Duo card I only have the standard memory stick cards, at least as of right now. And the other cool part about this cable is that now I have composite output for this. Now obviously this is like the worst way possible to transfer video. And believe me, I'm not going to do that, but, you know, the ability to connect it up to like a CRT or something like that is still really cool. And as this is, of course, a MiniDV tape-based system, we do, of course, have the wonderful FireWire input. FireWire is, of course, an amazing standard, probably one of the best standards, and it'll give us a one-to-one copy of our format here onto whatever system we're using. Obviously, I'm going to be using this with my Macs. This actually has FireWire, my 2012 Mac Mini, and I do actually have an 800 to Mini FireWire here, or iLink as Sony likes to call it. But what's also cool about this is that we have full-size HDMI. I love Sony stuff from this era. From mini disc to HDV, Sony was just making so much cool stuff around this time, not to mention the Sony Mavicas. It's insane what Sony was putting out through the late 90s and the early to mid 2000s. I could honestly talk about this camcorder all day, but first off, let's actually clean everything here because, well, yeah, it's definitely deserving of a good clean, and I'm sure it's gonna look a million times better. Check this out. I just take a paper towel with some isopropyl alcohol, and well, all I do is wipe it down. So in this case, we don't really have any like visible dirt or debris, with the exception of the Handycam itself. But for this stuff, it doesn't necessarily need like a super deep clean because, well, I mean, these do literally look brand new. So with the MiniDV tape, I will also take out the paper insert and clean the plastic case as well. If we're going to clean everything, we might as well do it properly. Another thing about the remote is that this is not broken, but rather it's supposed to be like this. Yes, it does look a bit strange, but it actually makes sense because the battery terminals here would get in the way if it was symmetrical. So this is cut out for that battery terminal on the left. And as for this power cable, I will be putting it back on the other power supply. With the MiniDV cassette, all we have to do is just take this out, take the paper out, and well, we have the case empty, and this will be cleaned up as well. Honestly, there isn't that much exciting to see here in terms of like a before and after because of just how good of condition everything is. We'll fast forward to everything here cleaned up, at least in terms of the accessories. This is exactly why I clean cables of any kind because, well, even though the power supply looked fine and cosmetically it's in great condition, as you can see, the paper towel itself tells another story. Everything cleaned up really nicely. Honestly, there wasn't much to clean off in the first place, but we did still get some hidden dirt and debris, especially off the power supply here. So let's put everything away for now and actually move on to the Handycam itself. Alongside the accessories, I also cleaned up the DVD camcorder. We do have bonus Handycam footage here. I don't necessarily know why it was so dirty here. In the past, I have done a lot of cleaning on camera, but in this case, I think we're more interested in the before and after here. So what I'll do is I'll show the camera as it is in its current state, and then we'll go into the future and actually see this fully cleaned up. These are the type of Handycams that I'm more accustomed to. This is a completely different thing, and I honestly still can't believe I have this here. It actually has metal on the outside. It still has plastic, but this is like super fancy mid-2000s type of plastic. The logo itself could do with a clean, but otherwise everything looks pretty good. Obviously, it does have signs of usage, and there is just dust and debris buildup everywhere, but this honestly isn't the worst I've seen. My Sony Mavica FD95 was in way worse condition than this in terms of like actual debris buildup, but it's still cleaned up really nicely. I'm sure the same will happen to this. And it really doesn't bother me that it is in used condition because honestly, that'll just make me want to use it more because this isn't like a factory example. So I'll actually be really happy to use this and I won't worry too much about the cosmetics because, well, it is a used Handycam at the end of the day. The physical controls clearly have signs of usage, but at least we do have the labels which are intact. I'll take out the cassette before we start cleaning, but the MiniDV deck itself is looking in pretty good shape. Nice. And here is a closer view of the deck itself. It is so cool to actually see a video head inside of an HD camera. Very cool. The lens also needs a good clean, but as you can see, it is in good condition, just a bit smudgy. Of course, we do still have the issue of no LCD, but the LCD itself actually looks to be in fantastic shape. And just like that, looks like I have some explaining to do because I guess I got a little carried away. Now, initially, I really was just planning on cleaning it up and leaving it as it is, because even though we didn't have a display, the core components were still operational. The tape mechanism was functional, the camera, all the sensors, and everything else was still functional. But the reason I decided to go a bit beyond that is because there was actually a whole bunch of dirt and debris in between where all the pieces connect. So like this part here, in front here, that I wanted to clean up, but I wasn't able to because, well, I just couldn't get access to it because of all the plastic pieces here. So I've worked on a variety of different electronics in the past, and I figured, what do I have to lose if I try to disassemble this? Now at this point, I hadn't even transferred the footage onto the Mac, so if something happened, I wouldn't have the intro. But I decided to go ahead and disassemble this anyways. I already have an iFixit toolkit, I had the service manual on an iPad next to me, and I just took my time disassembling this. Now, all things considered, this is a complicated device. I'm not going to say that this is easy to work on. It's only easy to work on if you actually know what you're doing. Now, I really haven't worked on Sony equipment in the past, at least in terms of handycams, but by following the service manual and knowing what to disconnect first, it was possible to do. I mean, there really isn't all that much different between this and like a MacBook or an iPhone. It still has ribbon cables, it has a variety of different screw sizes. You just have to be careful with all the components here, and really the only, I guess, difficult or the part you really have to pay attention to is the ribbon cables, because you can get replacements for some of them, but at the same time, it's better to not damage what's already working. Now, when it came to the ribbon cable for the display, I took it out of the Handycam and I wanted to see what was actually wrong with it. Obviously, it was torn, but what I didn't realize is that it is actually like 3 different cables that end up making one cable, and I figured it was already torn. Why not try to see if I can repair it? Now, repairing a ribbon cable, if you have all the proper equipment, is possible in theory, but it is obviously not like something you can easily do. Because of the way ribbon cables are made, they're very thin, you have to be very careful with it, but I just wanted to see if the cable itself was actually recoverable, and what I did is I actually started to scrape away some of the ribbon cable, and to my surprise, I was able to get connectivity back up to both sides of the cable. But as you can imagine, Scotch tape isn't exactly the best thing to keep a cable like this together, and it would only actually stay connected if I applied pressure to the cable. Now, this was just more of a fun experiment to do. I knew it really wasn't savable, and I learned that even though these cables are delicate, they are slightly more durable than I expected. So after learning a bit more about the cable itself, I decided to go ahead and get a new cable because I mean, the Handycam was already disassembled at this point. During disassembly, I noticed that this actually had some missing screws. Specifically, there were 2 missing screws on the actual LCD assembly itself. Now, obviously, we do still have a missing plastic piece here, and I have used some Scotch tape to obviously give the cable some protection between the metal hinge because I don't want the new cable to get torn up. But what I've done is I've taken 2 screws out of here which are compatible with the hinge assembly, and I've used that for the LCD. Apart from just a couple of missing screws, this is back to fully operational status, if not better, because we actually have the display. Now, there is one thing that technically doesn't work anymore, and that is the viewfinder. The viewfinder is connected up, but it is obviously not powering on because there is actually a switch in here which activates either the LCD or the viewfinder, and because of the missing plastic piece here, it cannot activate the switch. Now, I was able to manually activate it. You know, you obviously have to keep something pushing against the cable, and that is not exactly ideal. Now, I'm sure I could get a replacement plastic piece. Honestly, considering I don't even have the battery for this, and I'm using this plugged in all the time, I'd rather just have the LCD here. Now, it is still functional, I can use it again, but for now, I'm just keeping the switch activated with a piece of tape. We can actually use the zoom controls on this. And another cool thing that magically fixed itself is the zoom rocker. Now it is still a bit iffy. I'm pretty sure the contacts just need a bit more usage, but as you can see, I can use it and I don't have to use the remote here. I mean, obviously I can still use it, but it's not my only option anymore. We have restored functionality of this Handycam with the new cable on the LCD, and this I did actually give some isopropyl alcohol in between the plastics here, and I just kept on moving it back and forth. I'm pretty sure that's what caused it to start working again. I'm really happy with how this turned out, and I can't wait to do even more stuff with this awesome HDV Handycam. And obviously one of the biggest reasons why I wanted the touchscreen compared to the viewfinder is that apart from the larger display, everything is controlled here through the menu on the touchscreen itself, and there's a whole bunch of cool stuff that I won't get into right now. But without this, you really can't do that much with this because there's only a couple of buttons here, and the only real customizable button is this control here, which is called camera control. This also functions as your volume control, but now we can actually play back stuff directly on the camera. Now I know that this is obviously not ideal, but I'm really only planning on using this as a extra camera for the channel, and I'm obviously going to take very careful care of this, and I guess now I actually have a semi-modern camera, which is not an iPhone. Now calling this modern is probably a bit of a stretch, and the optics are still really fantastic on this. It's honestly crazy to think how old of a camera this is, because this is how a camcorder should look. This is awesome. And I guess I am going to be busy with MiniDV now. And if you're wondering how I actually got the footage off this, I used FireWire, I used a Macintosh, but it was not this model. I now have a dedicated setup just for MiniDV footage, and that's going to be a topic for a whole other video because we're just getting started when it comes to MiniDV. If you enjoyed today's video, then consider leaving a thumbs up, and if you want to see more content about awesome stuff like this, then consider subscribing because there is so much awesome stuff that I can't wait to get to. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.